Hi, it's Alexa Lippman, your realtor and lifestyle consultant. I love connecting people, and this is my show, Connections and Dots. Hey y'all, I wanted to introduce you to one of my really good friends. Her name is Rachel Baribeau, and she is a previous sports news broadcaster. She's a speaker. She's also written a book. She's just amazing, and she has this really cool thing called Changing the Narrative. So without further ado, Rachel, how are you today?
I am fantastic, my friend. How are you? Thanks so much for having me on, by the way.
Yeah, no, I'm so excited to have you. So can you tell us a little bit about Changing the Narrative?
Absolutely. I, as you mentioned, was a sportscaster for 17 years. First female host on Sirius XM on their college channels, voted for the Heisman, hosted the college football playoff, really kind of went to the top in my career. And in 2016, I really saw a problem within college athletics. No school was immune. There were guys getting in trouble and stealing the headlines, and it was really causing people to paint with a broad brush and say, well, all football players are blank. And then it really extended into other sports. God made me a do something girl, and I thought, I believe that there is the power to change the narrative, the power to trend for something positive and not just grab the headlines for something negative for getting in trouble. And so we went in, we started talking. I started talking about purpose, passion, platform, my own experience with domestic violence. And then over the years, the 4 years, 40 schools, it's expanded now out into everyday life, everyday people. This idea of being a king or a queen, that inside of every one of us exists a king or a queen, the opportunity to love yourself well with good love others well, leave a legacy. What's your greatest purpose in life? Because, you know, the thing is, Alexa, we were not born to earn a paycheck and die. You were born for more than that. And I think the quarantine is a great opportunity for a reset. But so many people we know are like, before the quarantine, we're wishing for Fridays and dreading Mondays. And that's just no way to live.
So based on that, what would your advice be during this quarantine?
I have a lot of advice because I've had to pivot my business. Normally I speak in front of large crowds. So obviously we couldn't do that with the quarantine. And I also visited colleges. So colleges were one of the first things to shut down. And so I had the choice very quickly in this quarantine to put the covers over my head and say, I'm done. My business is done. My movement's done. Budgets are going to dry up. Nothing's, it's all going to fall apart, or I could fight. I could pivot. And so I think the first thing I would say to people is to practice the pivot. What do you mean by that? Well, we can't focus on the speaking engagements that didn't happen, the trip that didn't happen, the wedding that had to get canceled, the whatever it is. We have to let that go. Practice the pivot. What can I do today? And I have this mantra I've been using: do the best you can with what you have, to the best of your ability, look for somebody to help, and then rest. And so if you apply that every single day to your life, that's kind of a blueprint, a way to live your life every day where you can lay your head on the pillow at night and be satisfied with your day. So that's the first thing I would say, the pivot and the blueprint. And the third thing I would say is this, is, you've got the whole world watching right now. So as I said to a group of athletes this morning, shoot your shot. I don't care what it is. Maybe you want to work with that famous artist. Maybe you want to have the skills that Alexa does, and you want to learn how to be this awesome stager and organizer and real estate agent. Reach out to Alexa, right? Like maybe there's somebody that you want to collaborate with. Maybe there's something you want to do in your life. Shoot your shot. Right now, you've got the entire world watching. You're writing a book of your life right now, and you're going to read it a year from now. You're going to read it 5 years from now. You're going to read it 20 years from now. Make it a good book. I've also been saying to people, last thing is become a master gardener. Figuratively, become a master gardener. Right now, you can plant big seeds. Right. Like, you never know what you plant right now, what could come of that. And so I really think if you follow that pivot, the mantra of taking care of yourself every day, of what kind of book are you writing? Who are you going to come out of this quarantine as? What would success look like? What would Alexa 2.0 look like after the quarantine? What would Rachel 2.0 look like after the quarantine?
I love that about you. You're super inspiring. What I also love about you is how raw and real you are. because a lot of people aren't willing to show that side of them.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that makes you so much more relatable.
Thank you for honoring that and seeing that in me. I call it radical vulnerability. In the movement,
Uh-huh.
we talk about taking off the mask and getting real. And I think people aren't drawn to your perfection. People are actually drawn to your imperfection. People are
Mhm.
drawn to the things that were meant to kill you, but actually made you stronger and that you're willing to talk about. And I am who I am in all my glory and all my foibles and all of it. And I'm for some people, and for some people, they don't like me, and that's okay. Right. But sometimes you have to get in the uncomfortable space to make magic happen. But I think when you really start to take off the mask and tell people, hey, this is what I'm going through, this is what I went through, I think that certainly helps.
But it's really easy to say that, okay, I'm going to pivot and I'm going to do this. But then our thoughts get to us and we start to swoop into that negativity again. And so, what do you suggest people do when they start feeling that way?
Listen, it really boils down to this, Alexa. Two things: fear or love.
Mm-hmm.
Fear or love. Everything that we do comes from those two emotions: fear or love, lack or plenty, lack or plenty. So regardless of the situation, in the morning, I get out of the bed and say, thank you, God, for another day. I'm blessed. I've got a roof over my head. I just slept in a clean bed. I've got, food in the pantry. That is a luxury that a lot of people right now in the quarantine do not have. And so I'm grateful for that. And I say, I'm going to do great things today. I'm going to accomplish great things. You're a queen. You're a winner. You're a warrior. So I really think it's important to be mindful of the way we speak to ourselves, because sometimes the truth is, Alexa, we would never speak to another human being the way we speak to ourselves sometimes.
Yes, I agree. I'm guilty too.
And I think too, we as a society have become so obsessed with speaking positively that we're not speaking
Mm-hmm.
truthfully. And truth is, the world needs to see you in all your glory and all your foibles, as I mentioned, and in the good, the bad, the happy, the sad. And that's what we really need to see of each other, is our true selves, not the mask. But there are days where I'm not positive, and there are days where I'm grieving so hard or I'm depressed, right? And so, for me to be a really high functioning human being, there are certain days where I wake up and there are a ton of things on my to-do list. I remember one day recently where I had all this to do on my to-do list, but I spent the day in my robe, in my recliner, watching The Office all day, eating healthy soup, and it was glorious. And it was everything that I needed to detach, to chill out, to cry a bit, to feel it, to process it, so that I could get back up the next day and be a high functioning individual. So I also, in addition to the positivity, in addition to speaking to yourself like a king or queen, I also want to give you permission to process whatever you're going through.
Right.
Your body holds on to it, Alexa. Whatever it is that you haven't processed, your body holds on to it. I was telling somebody a story this morning of when my father died, and I did not know how to process his guilt that I had for not being there when he passed away, and he passed away alone in the middle of the night. And for months afterwards, I've never really talked about this before, but for months afterwards, I had large weeping eczema spots on my leg that were really,
Mm-hmm.
really bad. Okay. They had to be
Right.
bandaged. It was very bad. No doctor could figure out what was going on. And until I was sitting in like the fifth waiting room one day, and I encountered what I believe was an angel. And she looked over at me, never met her in my life. And she said, why are you holding this in? And I'm like, what? What? And she said, why are you holding this in? And she saw me. She saw what I was carrying.
Mm-hmm.
And so from that moment forward, when she saw me, I started talking about it to a therapist. And you're gonna believe this because but
Yeah.
but as soon as I started to talk about it, the weeping eczema spots on my legs disappeared. The moment that I started to weep my grief, process my grief, my body stopped weeping for me. Isn't that crazy?
I love that. That's super inspiring also. Just everything you do. I'm like, oh my God, I love you. I'm so excited that you took the time today, and everyone should check out your book. Do you know when it's going to be released?
Yeah. So I have an ebook right now called Live Joy, The Art of Servant Leadership. And you can find that on my website. If you go to my Instagram, Rachel Baribeau, Baribeau, and you hit the link, you'll see my book. You'll see how you can book me to speak. You can see coaching. It's really for everybody. It's not just for athletes. RachelBaribeau.com, where the letter I am changingthenarrative.org. I'm changingthenarrative.org. And I'm so excited to connect with your audience. And thank you for having me on.
Yes, thank you so much. And I hope you have an awesome day.
Thanks, Alexa.
Thanks for connecting. Keep an eye out for more episodes soon. And if you'd like to connect further, you can always reach out to me via Instagram or my website.